Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm going to start out by doing a blanket statement saying everything contained within is allegedly things that happened. A lot of this may be hearsay. I am not positive about its accuracy. According to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons Database, over 600,000 people go missing every year, and about 4,400 unidentified bodies are recovered every year. About 1,000 of them remain John or Jane Doe cases after a year passes. The four states with the most missing persons at this time is California, Florida, Texas, and Arizona. Including murder victims and those who died via natural causes or otherwise, there are about 40,000 remains yet unidentified in the United States. Two of the people who went missing are brother and sister Michael and Monica Bennett, who went missing without a clue on June 21, 1989. Michael Anthony Bennett is described as he was born May 14, 1975. He was 14 years old when he went missing. He was 5 foot 7 inches tall and weighed 125 pounds. He was an African American male with black hair, brown eyes. He has a scar on his left knee. His sister, Monica Renita Bennett, is described as being born October 27, 1973. She was 15 years old when she went missing. She was 5 foot 5 and weighed 130 pounds. She was an African American female with black hair, brown eyes, and her ears were pierced. Investigators think that it is possible that Robert's brother was also involved in the siblings' disappearance, or that perhaps he knows what happened to them. He was often living with their family at different times, and Robert often lent him money. Their sister Shelia stated that their sister, I mean not Robert's, I meant the children's sister. She stated that Robert's brother had sexually abused her as a child, and their mother Deborah warned their children to stay away from him. When Monica and Michael disappeared, their mother Deborah George was separated from Robert George. Monica and Michael were staying with other relatives in 1989. Monica was staying with her real dad, and Michael was staying with Robert's first wife and his half-siblings. Michael was born when Robert was still married to his first wife, but he did not take his last name. His first wife treated Michael very well and accepted him into the family. Robert later divorced his first wife and married Deborah before having 4 other daughters. Michael was last seen in Brunswick, Georgia on June 21, 1989, with his older sister Monica Bennett. They were last reportedly seen at Heritage Apartments in the 5700 block of Altima Avenue. Monica and Michael went missing just weeks after Deborah and Robert separated. Robert had just gotten a new apartment in Brunswick, Georgia, but he went to get both Michael and Monica to help him move. He then asked if Deborah would take him back while he had the 2 children with him just before they went missing. And then 2 weeks later, they were back together and they were moving away to Alabama with their children still missing. Her sister, Monica's sister, Shelia Wigfall, remained in Brunswick as she did not live at home. It seemed a bit odd that Robert said he was moving back to Alabama, his original home state, even though he had just gotten an apartment in Brunswick. He had picked up the 2 of them to help him pack and move on the day that they vanished. Monica was said to be extremely close with her older sister, Shelia Wigfall, in 1989. Shelia was no longer living at home, but Shelia, Monica, and Michael all attended high school classes at Glen Academy in Brunswick. Shelia Wigfall was married, pregnant, with her first-born child, and living with her in-laws. Monica and Shelia spoke to each other at school. Earlier in 1989, Monica told Sheila that Robert had been sexually abusing her. She was afraid to go home. Sheila took her to the school's guidance counselor, who took them to the police to report the crimes. Deborah did not believe Monica and thought she was telling lies so that she wouldn't have to live at home anymore. This was not the first time that Robert had sexually abused children in the home. Deborah, his wife, had walked in on Robert sexually abusing her 13-year-old sister. Another of Monica and Michael's sister had caught Robert trying to sneak into her bedroom at night. The mother refused to believe he had sexually abused Monica, though. Michael was close to Robert and also did not believe Monica at the time. Michael later walked in on Robert sexually molesting his sister Monica. He told Deborah about it, and she decided to separate from Robert. This is when Michael went to live with Robert's first wife and when Monica went to live with her real dad. Not much is known about her real dad, but Monica's family said she would not have gone to live with him if she had had a better choice. Deborah's children that Robert fathered lived with her but visited him on the weekends. On the afternoon of the day that they disappeared, Robert went to his ex-wife's home to pick up Michael, stating that he needed him to help him pack. Michael was crying as they left and did not want to go. Robert then went and picked up Monica as well from her dad's house. The three of them went to Robert's apartment complex together. Robert's apartment was almost completely empty at the time they disappeared, according to their siblings, with only some bedding and other things. There are mixed reports, as Robert allegedly stated that they went missing after Robert dropped them off at their mother's residence. Deborah said she had not seen the children that day. Monica and Michael's 4 younger sisters said that later in the evening, Robert came and picked them up and took them back with him as he drove around the apartment complex slowly. He did not ask anyone if they had seen them or even call out their names. He took them to his apartment, and one of the girls said that sheeting and the comforter from one of the apartment beds was just gone, as well as there being 2 garbage bags near the door. Robert said that these bags contained Michael and Monica's things. Were Michael and Monica's bodies inside the bags? Robert said that he was at home and he watched them run out of the apartment and they never came back. Another time, Robert said he had dropped them off. He left to run errands, and when he got back, they were just gone. Their aunt was living in the same apartment complex, the Merritt Landing apartment complex, on Altima Avenue in Brunswick, Georgia, and just across the courtyard from Robert's apartment. The aunt said Michael and Monica visited her that evening before dark, had something to eat, and when she walked them outside at around 8:30 p.m., she could see Robert there outside. The last time Sheila Wigfall saw her sister was near the end of the school day, less than 3 hours before the Bennett siblings were reported missing. One of the last things I remember was Monica telling me. She had to tell me something important, Sheila Wigfall said. She told me she didn't want to go home. She never saw or heard from her sister again. It should also be noted that the police report regarding their disappearance states that Robert called Deborah to tell her the children had disappeared. This is odd since Robert was on the phone asking to go home to Deborah at this time, as said by the children's aunt. Also, Monica and Michael were both in sight at the time mentioned above. Within a few days of the Bennett's children going missing, Robert's car disappeared as well. His children were never able to find out what happened to it. A few weeks later, Robert and Deborah got back together and took their remaining children with them to Alabama on a bus to move there. They left Sheila Wigfall behind in Georgia. For 15 years, Michael and Monica were classified as endangered runaways with the police and missing persons agencies. Police didn't even start investigating the case until the early 2000s. In 2004, their cases were classified as endangered missing, and police and their family believe that other factors caused their disappearance. Most family members believe Robert was involved in their case. Deborah's mother describes him as manipulative, controlling, and a violent person who would occasionally beat Deborah. The younger children also remember violent occurrences due to Robert. After the family moved to Alabama, Deborah was known to occasionally leave Robert, but would always come back. She would leave her children in his care whenever she left. Robert spoke with the aunt and asked her to contact Deborah on the day of the children's disappearance so he could come back home now. Deborah and Robert both said the children simply ran away and that Monica had a boyfriend who was involved with drugs. The possibility that they ran away is disputed since neither of them took any money or any of their belongings with them. Michael and Monica remain missing. There's been no sign of them since their 1989 disappearance. Foul play is suspected in their disappearances, which remains unsolved. I'm going to end the video with the remainder of the blanket statement saying everything contained within is allegedly things that happened. A lot of this may be hearsay. I am not positive about its accuracy. Thank you for tuning in to my channel. Bye-bye.